welcome your questions.
Thank you, President. We'll move on to Q&A. Just one tiny health warning. Please tell us who you are and who you work for when you ask the question, and without wanting to limit anybody's freedom to ask anything they want, we would like to strongly limit the time we spend in this common discussion about individual projects in individual countries. We can talk about them perhaps later in the margin, within reason. Yeah, we've got a first question, please.
Thank you, President. Hi, Christopher Strzemka, Polish Press Agency. I have a question on group result in 2017, because it seems that total investment supported dropped compared to the 2016. It's 250, and it was 2016. It was 218. It's 10% less. Could you explain us why this total investment is lower in 2017? Thank you.
This cannot be seen as a surprise, because we are not a volume-driven institution, but even more important, 2017 showed the first effects of two major developments. One is the difficult situation between the European Union and its member states, and on the one hand, and Turkey on the other hand. So the business in Turkey has gone down considerably, and we hope that there will be a new political development that will reverse that trend. The other thing is the unfortunate situation of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, and the demand for British projects has gone down, although we continue, of course, to lend in the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom is, for the time being, a member of the European Union and a shareholder of the bank. However, from the point of view of the business partners in the UK, it is natural that demand has gone down. It has not gone down as far as the rest of the European Union is concerned.
A question here.
Yes, Brooks Signer, Jane's Defence Weekly. The EIB has been under rather heavy pressure from the Commission and Council to open up the lending to the defence and security sectors to support the European Defence Fund and PESCO. Could you please tell us where things stand on that, the timing, whether this is going to happen or not, etc.? Thank you.
In a certain way, we have always been active in this field, because you have projects or products in the field, let's say, of space technology or so, where we have always been present, and where the dual-use options are obvious. And therefore, when it comes to the European satellites, for instance, and things like that, the EIB has always been there. We are ready to increase, to do more. But although we do not intend to invest into weapons production, that's not our business. Helping the member states to make Europe a safer and more secure place is, of course, an obligation for the bank to fulfill. And in the crisis of migration, it has become very obvious that the expectations of the member states and the European institutions vis-à-vis the bank are enormous. We try to meet that. We will be very careful not to have a negative impact on our funding activities, because we need the money from the capital markets, and we will be very cautious not to be considered as a weapon producer or somebody who supports the production of lethal weapons. That is not our job. But security and defense are a much wider concept, where a bank like ours can have a significant impact, and I've promised to the European Council that we are intending to go that way.
There's a question up there.
Thank you very much. Michael Peel, Financial Times. To follow up on that question, can you give us some more details of both the amount and the types of projects that you're thinking of doing on defence? I was interested in hearing you tie it into migration, for example, and also to expand a little bit on what you alluded to there about possible concerns from investors such as sovereign wealth funds about what exactly the EIB is going to be doing in the defence field. Have you had any concerns raised by any investors about the direction you're moving in? And then finally, just to follow up on your point earlier, you mentioned Brexit. Is there any more clarity on how that will be managed in the EIB, and are you worried that the impact if the UK is able to cash out quite quickly?
I cannot quantify the projects that might have a security relationship, because as is quite normal, that it cannot be easily separated and split up between civilian and non-civilian applications. If you take, for instance, the energy efficiency measure for for barracks of policemen or soldiers, is that a civilian application or a military application? So you have borderline questions there. So we are ready to expand more in this field, but we will remain cautious. The same is true for cybersecurity. We have always been active in this field of cybersecurity. In the next years, there is a lot that needs to be done, where the interface between research and development and the application for security is evident. So we will be helpful to the member states in this context, but it's not something that we would quantify in terms of a certain number of billions of euros. Yeah, I come to that question. We have not heard the concerns, but we know that there might be concerns, and we are therefore very watchful. And we are aware that there are several wealth funds who in their statutes have a prohibition to invest into papers that are linked to the production of weapons. And we have to take this into consideration and be cautious. But so far it has not developed into a problem for us. And as I said, we will remain prudent. On the United Kingdom question, I mean, this is for me still, to be quite blunt, the most terrible decision that has been taken in 2016, with the exception of one more that year. And it is painful, in my view, and has negative effects for our citizens on both sides of the canal. Probably more than in the United Kingdom than on the continent, but it's bad enough for us as well. For the bank, it is painful because the United Kingdom is a strong shareholder of the bank. It holds 16.1% of the shares of the bank. We have an annual investment volume in the United Kingdom of between 7 and 9 billion euros. The projects in the UK over the last decades have been particularly good, and the loan book in the UK is particularly good. I believe that the EIB has been key in financing key infrastructure in the United Kingdom and key innovation projects all the way up to the wind farms in the North Sea and major transportation projects in the United Kingdom. So we hate to see that going, and I believe it will be felt in the United Kingdom because the United Kingdom until now does not have anything that is comparable to the national promotional banks we have in the other big countries like CDC in France or CDP in Italy, KfW in Germany, ICO in Spain, BGK in Poland. This does not exist yet in the United Kingdom. The British Business Bank is beginning. We wish them all the best, but it will take time until it's up and running. So I think we will leave a gap in financing the UK, and therefore it's a very, very painful thing. Losing 16% of the capital, of course, is quite a blow for us as well, because I showed you how much of a leveraged bank we are. If in such a highly leveraged institution the capital is reduced by 16%, then you have an inverse leverage effect, which is very, very negative. So we get to feel that. But I'm convinced, and I don't have any other indication, that the shareholder support of our member states of the European Union is without any question. And that is extremely important for the capital markets to know, because they want to know what kind of an institution they invest into, even without one of the strongest shareholders, which we hate to see leaving.
Very good.
Is there any more clarity about how that money will be drawn in the time period?
Well, we have Monsieur Barnier, who is negotiating on our behalf, also on our behalf with the United Kingdom, has found the solution for the first phase now, and I think he has been successful in coming to a solution for the repayment of the paid-in capital of the United Kingdom over a period of time, over time. This, I think, is a very fair solution, and I assume that it will be part of the end deal with the United Kingdom, and the rest has to be negotiated in the future, but I will not interfere here. The European institutions have decided to stick together, to work together. I've never seen the Europe more united, and therefore we will not have parallel negotiations to that. We will be part of the overall negotiation activity, and we have full trust and we fully support Michel Barnier.
Very good. There's a question here.
Hello, Peter Taffer with EU Observer. How do you expect the public to trust that the EIB has learned from the Volkswagen case and is doing everything it can to prevent future fraudulent use of its loans if the EIB and Olaf refuse to publish the report which explains what happened?
I cannot comment on Olaf, but I can tell you that our sensitivity, which has always been pretty high, has even been going up since we made this experience, this disappointing experience with that one company. And you can be sure that our compliance partners and experts, our investigators are fully on track in order to find out what has been going on and what might be looming there in the future in this field. We have been seriously hit by this case and the neighboring cases, so to speak. We have done what we could in order to cooperate with Olaf and all the other institutions, and our sensitivity is extremely high on these questions. Our standards, which we have in our procurement policy, in our environmental criteria and our social criteria, are very, very high. We are very ambitious, and in most cases we are in the market the leaders in this respect. And so we have to live up to a reputation that so far is very high, and we intend to maintain that.
Hi, Francesco Garascio, Reuters. Just a few clarifications on what you said about the development financing. I understand that you plan to expand your investment in development projects from, I understand, 27 billion this year. Do you have an idea what could be the target? And the figure is the result of what I can read on your documents, where you say that climate action finance is 19 billion plus 7.9. You consider all this development, but maybe if you want to focus just on development, if you can tell me how you could increase this funding, and also if you can clarify that you plan to shift 5%, if I understood correctly, 5% of money that is currently used as grant, and you want to use it as you do for the investment plan, for the Juncker investment plan, to multiply the effect. And finally, could you tell us whether this possible increase in spending could be used, for example, to increase EU spending on UNRWA, like the agency, the United Nations Agency for the Palestinians? Thanks.
We are, to start with the last point, we are active in Palestine, and we see the responsibility of the European Union there, and try to be helpful. But I wouldn't be able to go into specific projects of UNRWA. I know what kind of valuable work is being done there, but that would go too far, and maybe my colleagues can give you later information about what we're concretely doing in the region together with UNRWA or without them. But on the general question, climate is not only development. We are doing huge climate projects within the European Union. So when we do 27% of all our activities in the climate field, the biggest part of it is in the European Union. However, since the marginal effect of an investment of €1 into climate action outside of Europe is normally much higher than within Europe, where we already have reached a relatively high standard of climate awareness and environmental protection, it is normal that we think about doing more in climate action outside the European Union. We were among the multilateral development banks in the run-up to the Sustainable Development Goal decision of the United Nations in 2015 and the Paris Climate Accord in December 2015, the driving force behind these multilateral development banks. And in that context, we committed that we will do 25% of our lending overall with the climate action relationship. And outside the European Union, we have committed to raise that to 35% by 2020. And we are well on track to reach that. So climate is an issue for us both in the European Union and outside. Now, on development, we have been doing development since the start of the European Economic Communities. We have been active in what is now Cotonou Agreement. We have been organizing the investment facility. We are around in three-digit number of countries of the world, so development is nothing new for us. What has changed is the following. I put it into a picture. When I took over, shortly after my arrival at the bank, the chair of the meetings of the multilateral development banks, I was a little bit odd man out, because if you look at it precisely, we are the only multilateral development bank where the word development does not appear in the name, except the World Bank. But everybody knows the World Bank is a development agency. But the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, even our neighbors in London, which were shareholders of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the so-called Eastern Europe Bank, they have the word development in the name. We are considered investment bank. And the reputation of investment bankers is not necessarily the most popular one around the world. So there was a little bit a hesitation vis-à-vis us. 2 years later, the colleagues from the other banks said, okay, development is coming your way. Because what is needed for development is the mobilization of more resources in order to reach the objectives. It was becoming crystal clear with the Sustainable Development Goals. And in this context, the experience of the Juncker Plan within the European Union, shifting a small part of the money that went into subsidies or grants in order to be able to give guarantees for more riskier projects if something goes wrong, is something that the others have observed very closely. And they come to the conclusion more and more that this kind of a shift of the budgetary, the use of the budgets is necessary for development financing as well. We need to crowd in the private sector there. And there, all of a sudden, they believe that the institution that is most familiar with crowding in, the EIB, the EU bank, should be playing a key role there. We are doing, as I said, development for decades. However, it's part of the normal structure of the bank. And we are finding out that we should be more ambitious, not necessarily in volumes. That's a different question. We must make more out of €1. And that is, we must organize ourselves better. So we intend, completely independent of what others are going to do, we intend to reorganize our development activities, do it in a specialized part of the bank, which might develop into a subsidiary one day. I hope it will, by the way, because we would like to repeat what we have done successfully with the European Investment Fund, which 20 years ago was set up as a co-production of the European Union, the EIB, and the member states' institutions. And nowadays, 60% of the shares in EIF are held by the bank, 30% are held by the European Union, represented, of course, by the European Commission, and the rest goes with partners in the member states who are smaller shareholders there. Something similar could be envisaged for our development activities once we reach the stage of a subsidiary. And I would be extremely happy to have the European Union as a shareholder. DEFCO or whoever from the Commission would be responsible for that. I hope that the development agencies or national promotional banks of the member states would be willing to invest into such an exercise. So we are completely open on that. But we begin by saying we ourselves must gain more efficiency. We must prepare ourselves to produce synergy with others and also to contribute to give European development policy, which the member states and the Commission will shape, but we will try to help financing, gets more visibility. It cannot be that Europe, the European Union and its member states is by far the largest provider of development assistance around the world, and it is so little visible. And that is something we would like to see change and want to make a contribution to that.
Okay, there's a question up there and then there.
Thank you. Simon Taylor from MX. Just a question about the UK's role. The agreement reached with the UK by the 27th in December talks about the UK being keen on some arrangement with the EIB in phase 2 of the talks. Could you tell us what discussions have taken place or what ideas might be circulating, and that report also says that there will be no financing of new projects after the withdrawal date. So just to check, that means from March 2019 the UK projects will no longer benefit from EIB financing. I'm sure that's the case, but if you could just clarify that for us.
Well, things are very open, and they're discussed between the European Union and the United Kingdom, and we will not interfere nor comment. We are very happy with the shareholdership of the United Kingdom. I think we have given a considerable contribution to the modernization of industry and infrastructure in the United Kingdom. We are proud of it. And on the other hand, I believe that our friends in the United Kingdom are aware of that contribution and are not happy that automatically, with the departure from the European Union, the clause becomes relevant in the treaty that says the members of the European Investment Bank are the members of the European Economic Community, or nowadays the European Union. So unfortunately there is this automatism. If the member states want to come to a different solution, we'll have to address that issue then, but we cannot actively pursue that. We have an excellent relationship, I must say, with Her Majesty's Treasury, and our industrial talks and connections to the United Kingdom continue to be very good. When it comes to Brexit, of course, we do projects also in the European economic area. We do projects in Norway, but this is to a minimal percentage of what we are doing in the United Kingdom as a shareholder of EIB, because of course the shareholders of our bank expect us to be particularly active in the member states. I would not go any further than that. You feel and hear my pain, but this does not go to decisions of the EU institutions, but to the decision of the British people and the government that will implement that.
Question there. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Nawab Khan from the Kuwait News Agency. Sir, of the 901 projects that you approved last year, what percentage was outside Europe, and in which regions? Thank you.
The volume in terms of euros is 10%, roughly, or a little bit more. But the number of projects I don't have present. The Secretary General will give you the figures later because I simply don't memorize it.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks a lot. Alex Pigman from Agence France Presse. I just wanted to come back to the development angle briefly. If you could just maybe provide even more clarity in terms of what your ambitions are for development, especially vis-a-vis other, the other, let's say, national development banks. And isn't there a risk of sort of crowding out, dare I say, all the different projects? I mean, if someone's working in the development community, I mean, how are they supposed to make sense of your ambition or the EIB's ambition to get into this market, for lack of a better word?
I have no concerns whatsoever in this direction between the national promotional banks and national development agencies do not begin to be our partners. We are partnering with them for decades. And I've seen projects from Vanuatu to Mozambique where I've seen this fantastic cooperation, in the case of Vanuatu, by the way, with Agence France Développement and others in other parts of the world. So this is going to be continued. We want to partner with them. And I just returned on this Sunday from a visit to UN Secretary General Guterres and the Chairman of the General Assembly, Mr. Lajčák. And they both told me crystal clear that the achieving of the Sustainable Development Goals makes it absolutely inevitable that the national agencies and the UN agencies and the EU agencies work together as closely as possible. So crowding out or any kind of thinking like that will be completely wrong. On the other hand, what we must credibly do, and there I think we still have a way to go, we have to make credible offers to the national promotional agencies and development institutions that we want to partner with them on eye level. This is very, very important. We are aware that the volumes that need to be achieved in the next years are so enormous that we need small and big institutions on the national level. And we are aware AfD is doing much more on development than we are doing. So we would like to join the strong ones. And the same goes true with development agencies from other countries. So we are going for partnerships and not for competition.
There's a question there.
Thank you. Dan Michaels, Wall Street Journal. Two questions related to your push into more enterprise-level investment and financing in Europe as part of the Juncker plan. Going more sort of down market towards smaller businesses and more businesses, you probably are going towards riskier projects. There's a widely held belief that, or a view that one of the things that Europe is lacking at enterprise level is an appetite for risk. As a public institution, are you able to put yourself in the position of equity investors, venture capitalists, and accept that risk? And are your overseers willing to let you take on more risk like that? And along these lines, with your effort to improve financing for businesses, do you see demonstrable evidence that you're bringing in new other financiers, banks, capital markets, or new types of financing? Are you sort of priming the pump for the financial markets and the financial community? Thank you.
Everything, yes. Crystal clear. And you must see that what kind of a DNA change the Juncker plan, which we developed together with Mr. Juncker at that time, has brought to the bank. If I go into the history book of the bank 20 years ago, if I look for risk, there might have been fear, but not a risk inclination. Nowadays, it is there. And the better use of the EU budget and similar steps could be taken by others, like the member states, helps us in going into this more risk-inclined position. On the question of private equity, I would take the opportunity to pass the floor to Pierluigi Gilibert, the CEO of our investment fund.
Thank you, President. Indeed, the EIF has been historically very present in the venture capital market here in Europe.
Doesn't put the button. Here, this one.
I don't have any.
Okay.
Now it should work.
And we have been by far the most active actor in this space. We have constantly increased our financing in venture capital, private equity and private debt markets here in Europe. In 2017, we have signed more than 3.3 billion worth of new financing. We believe we leverage probably as much as 15 billion from a private sector investor in this area. We are seeing that, also thanks to the Juncker plan, that this market has been maturing in Europe. We see the average size of venture capital fund is increasing. The teams are maybe at the second or third generation of fund launching their funds. And we also see that more and more of these teams are pan-European. So we are seeing finally that this market has less fragmentation and is becoming really European. I believe that the EIF, the EIB Group, has some merit in it. And we cover really all the various sectors of the venture capital market, from the very early stage, seed capital, tech transfer, to the mezzanine and growth stage. So really we have a very large breadth and a very comprehensive approach. And we see that this market is improving, and we are determined to maintain our role in it.
Okay. First question here, and then we come back to.
Thomas van Heste, the correspondent. In the beginning, you mentioned that cohesion was one of the main goals of the European Investment Bank in the beginning years. I wonder if it's still an important goal to support less developed regions, and if so, can you explain to me why the investment in countries like Bulgaria and Romania is so low?
As a matter of fact, improvement is still possible. So we are in a high-tech union, and even microphones should be switchable, and switchability should be visibilized. Anyway, no, cohesion was at the core of the foundation of the bank. If you go into the history of the treaties of Rome, at that time, the need to set up something that has developed into EIB can be found in the talks about the difference of participation or benefit taking from the Marshall Plan after World War II. At that time, we had parts of what would become the European Economic Community who benefited strongly from the Marshall Plan, and other parts, for instance, Mezzogiorno, which did not. And at the beginning, between Bercy and Bonn, there was a discussion about setting up something like a European Marshall Fund for disadvantaged regions. So the talks then concluded that it might be better to set up a bank which would go to the capital markets in order to raise money for these purposes and not only rely upon public funds. This bank then was EIB and is still in the statutes of the bank. According to the treaty, cohesion is one of the key issues. Now, it is an issue in old regions of the European Union, and it is an issue, of course, in particular in the newer regions. In some regions, it has worked fantastically. We have a vice president who is particularly responsible for cohesion activities, Vasil Hudak from Slovakia. He has made a huge impact on these activities. You have countries where the development of projects is difficult, and political environment is not always conducive to that. This is, for instance, the case in Romania. It's very difficult, and we are putting a lot of effort, in particular via advisory services. One of the big new developments in this field into Romania. Bulgaria is a different case. In Bulgaria, it has been working for a long time. If you look at major infrastructure projects in Bulgaria, you'll see they are EIB financed. The entire metro system of Sofia is an EIB project. Interconnectors between Bulgaria and Greece and all these things. This is very active EIB participation. But I met the Bulgarian presidency minister yesterday in Luxembourg, and she made it crystal clear that for the Bulgarian presidency, the emphasis on cohesion will be key. And this is in agreement with 3 consecutive presidencies: Bulgaria, Austria, and Romania. They will all make sure that we will be strong on cohesion, and we will have to deliver. In addition to that, by the way, they will make sure that there doesn't appear the impression that the European Union neglects the situation of the Western Balkans. So I believe the Berlin process for the Western Balkans will get a new impetus as well during the Bulgarian presidency, and we are happy to be part of it. So cohesion remains key for us.
Okay. Back to the Financial Times.
Thank you, Michael Peel.